Gouveia.
Federico Gouveia.
Federico.
Yeah.
Federico Gouveia.
Okay. Shall we go?
Yeah, we should. Live is ready. There's no up there with you.
Is the music?
I'll go first.
Okay.
All right, everyone. I think we're going to go ahead and start with segment 2.
I can
Hope
press
everybody
play.
had a nice break. Again, I wanted to remind you that if you are interested in having fraternal assistance, please see one of the coordinators, Josie, Bella, and others. So raise your hands, everyone who's coordinating the fraternal assistance, please. Here we are, stand up, recognize. So please talk to those folks if we would like to have that take place. Okay, so now we're going to have another little bit of a musical interlude. A couple people, so I'd like to invite Anthony Cornwall to come back up, and we'll be accompanied by Federico Gouveia on the violin.
Wait, we're going
So
to
take
sing
it away.
He's going to play a little bit together.
I know that, wow, I can't even, I don't even know what to say after that. Good job, Kevin. That's a tough act to follow. That's a really tough act to follow, but the good news is we have a really good act that is following that. So I'm really happy to announce Julio Carvalho, who I've known for several years now, and is a tremendous speaker. Someone who I actually aspire to be, when I get to that point. So I'd like him to come up, if you wish, Julio, and we're going to talk just a few minutes and see what is going on with you. So how are things with you these days?
Fine.
Doing well?
Doing good.
The children are good?
The children are good.
Great, great. Well, I'm so glad that you're able to come back and do this again. You've been kind of a standing act that we've had in suicide prevention for the last several years, so it's really, really wonderful to have you back again.
It's been my honor.
Great. Well, I'm going to go ahead and let you take it away then and tell us what you have for us.
Excellent. Everyone, allow me to start by wishing you peace in our hearts. A wise man and his followers were walking from city to city, learning from life itself. And as they approached this small town, they saw this farm. And the farm had broken barbed wire, no plantations of any kind, and there was a house in the middle of the farm. There was this huge crack in the wall, parts of the roof were missing. And as they approached this little house, the disciples concluded, the house is abandoned, the farm is abandoned, because obviously no one is taking care of it. But for their surprise, here came a family, a man, a woman, and 2 kids. They all looked malnourished. The man had rag clothing, the children had barefoot, and the woman's hair was completely out of place. And you can judge a family financial status by the woman's hairdo. So the wise man approached the father and asked, "How is life?" And this man responded, "My life is miserable. I hate my life." "Why is it?" And he said, "Do you see that little cow over there? And you know that because of a visual illusion, when objects are very far, they appear very little. And for these individuals, the cow appeared as a cat. So he pointed to the cow and he said, "I milk the cow. My wife, she washes the cow. And my children, they walk the cow. And as you can see, there are no grass for the cow to eat. She's starving. Therefore, we all are starving as well." The wise man looked at this man and said, "I wish you a better life, and I'll see you in a couple of years." So the wise man and his disciples walked towards the cow. And animals can sense the presence of human beings, and as they approached the animal kept walking further and further away. And it got to a point that they couldn't see the house and those individuals. So the wise man looked at his disciples and ordered them, "Let's take the cow to the wilderness." The disciples looked at the wise man and said, "Master, are you out of your mind? You just heard that man saying that his family existence depends on this cow. If we take the cow, they would not have anything to eat." Wise man looked at them and said, Do not question my orders. Just simply take the cow to the wilderness." So here are the disciples pulling the cow, who is resisting their drag, and eventually the cow disappears. A couple of years went by, and here comes the same wise man with his disciples, learning from life itself. And as they approach the same city, they see the same farm. But now the farm is completely changed. New barbed wire going around the farm. There were plantations of all kinds: potato, rice, beans, carrots, lettuce, tomatoes. And the house was all fixed up. Brand new roof. Obviously, the disciples looked at his wise man and said, "Master, something definitely changed." And the master asked him, "What do you think has changed?" Well, obviously, a new family bought the farm, fixed it up, and kicked the old family out. But as they approached the house, for their surprise, here comes out the same four individuals from a couple of years in the past. The kids, they had book bags and shoes. They were going to school. The man looked so strong and healthy, and the woman had her hair fixed up, which was a sign that financially they were doing well. So the wise man approaches the father and once again asks him, "How is life?" And he says, "Well, I love my life. It's wonderful." And the wise man asks him, "How come? You love your life so much now, but then you hate it." And the wise man explained, "For some coincidence, the last time I saw you was also the last time I saw my cow. So we didn't have anything to eat. So I scrambled for some change I had saved up, and I bought something for us to eat for a couple days. But then I figured, if I spend the little amount of money I have and I buy food with it, in a couple of days, we will definitely starve ourselves to death. So I decided to buy some seeds, and little did I know how fertile our ground was. Before I knew it, there were potatoes, tomatoes, lettuce, and we're eating right from our ground. But the ground was so fertile that we started not to have food for ourselves, but enough to sell as well. So we were making a profit, and with that, we bought a new cow. And now the cow has something to eat, so she was producing lots of milk, and we were selling the milk. So I fixed the farm. Life is great." So the wise man looked at his disciples and says, "The problem with the majority of us is not that we aim so high and we miss it. It's because we aim so low and we hit it. We are capable of so much more, yes, we settle for so less. And the result of us being capable of so much more, and yet we settle for so less, it creates a void, an existential void, which individuals try to fulfill that void with all sorts of substances, thinking that the void will be filled by substances, chemical dependence, and even food. And the result of is that the void keeps getting bigger, and hence more substance to try to cover a bigger hole. Then more substance, and the hole just keeps getting bigger. And this explains the progressive nature of any addiction. And that is not the solution to our problems. And obviously, there are many people who are taking their physical lives with the method of poisoning themselves with all sorts of substances. So people come up to me and say, "Aren't you surprised with the growing number of people committing suicide?" I am not surprised at all. That's my answer. I am not surprised at all with the number of people committing suicide. I am saddened about it, which is different. I lament that so many people are taking their own lives, but I'm not surprised. To be surprised is to see something that you don't expect. That's where surprise comes from. You're dealing with an unexpected issue. But if we're living in such materialistic environment, why we are so surprised of the high number of suicides? We shouldn't be surprised at all. because that is the result of materialism. What is materialism? Materialism is the concept that everything is matter, including you. Your thoughts, your emotions are nothing but the result of chemical reactions. The same way that your pancreas secretes insulin, for materialists, your thoughts, who you are, it's secreted by your neurons. And under this concept of materialism, the aim of life is to experience material sensation, sensory pleasure. The goal of life, of materialism, the definition of happiness, since we are all material, is to experience sensory pleasure. And how do we experience sensory pleasure? By having money. Hence, the goal of our existence is to get to money in order for us to experience sensory pleasure. Do you follow me so far? And if I don't have the money to experience sensory pleasure, that means I am a sad, miserable individual. And the epitome of feeling sad and miserable is to commit suicide as a solution to my problem. And the numbers have increased because I believe that the means of comparing ourselves with other people have also changed. Like the other speaker said, because we have internet, now I can compare myself with other people way easier than I used before. What that means, society, in a materialistic point of view, expects of me, age of 45 years old, to have a house, be married, have money, have things. My goal is to drive a Mercedes. If I don't have these things, I'm not happy. Just look at the commercials. All these products, they are readily available to us. Their goal is to bring us happiness. Watch the commercials. Do you see anyone with a specific phone on their hand in the commercial crying because they're using their phone? No, you see them happy. You see them smiling with joy. Any car commercial, do you see anyone crying while they're driving the car they're trying to sell you? Absolutely not. It's just the opposite. The person is bursting with laughter because they're driving that specific car. So we associate the idea that if I get this product, I'll be happy as the actor driving the car in the commercial. And this is constantly bombarded to us. And we absorb this consciously or unconsciously, and we think by getting things that will bring us happiness. Now, the Spiritist philosophy does not condemn having money whatsoever. It doesn't teach that in order for us to be emotionally well, we must be poor. What it teaches us is that we shouldn't be attached to material things. It tells us that we should have things, but not allow things to have us. What's the difference between having things and things having us? When I have a thing, it means I use temporarily for my well-being. What is for things to have me? It's when I believe that my sole happiness is based upon having this thing. And what happens when something happens to this thing, it's no longer there, then I am a miserable individual. So from this point of view, someone who's 45 years old, from society expects this individual to reach certain points in his life. And that is to have things, have a family, have a degree, have a job. And if I don't fulfill those requirements, then I'm supposed to be miserable. Imagine if you're a woman, you're 42 years old, no husband, you're single, but this is what society expects of a woman, to be married, to have kids. To the extent that there are all sorts of reasons a marriage might fail, but the woman will think that she's solely responsible for not creating a happy marriage. So now this lady will look at her phone, she's single, it's Saturday night, there is no one calling her, no kids, graduated in high school with her, and this lady is going out with her family. And obviously, when they show anything on Instagram, Facebook, they're showing the best that they're going through, not the worst. But we all are experiencing the worst. So that quietness, that silence, inspires this woman to compare herself, her misery, with this other person's illusion of happiness or true happiness. But it's a method of comparison. But that comparison in the past was harder to happen. And reason being is because we did not have the technology that brings to our fingertips other people's lives. So our private life is no longer private. So she experienced the sadness and loneliness of being by herself. Now, let me open a parenthesis here about being lonely and being silent. One of the individuals I have provided psychotherapy with, she spent most of her life being someone's mistress. This guy, who was married with kids from another family, kept promising her over and over again that eventually I'll leave my wife to be with you. And she believed in this individual. And now she's 57 years old. She cannot have any kids. And this is what she tells me, that the worst part of her day is coming home and realize that everything is exactly as the way she left. That's the worst part of her day. And the reason I say this is that there are a lot of parents and grandparents are furious about the mess the kids make at home. But for this woman, her misery is coming home and see that everything is left untouched, unchanged. This is go to tell that your misery is someone else's happiness. Enjoying the mess at your home. Closing the parenthesis. So a materialistic society would tell you that you must reach these goals in life in order for you to experience happiness. So I am not surprised at all if people are committing suicide. Some of them might have a spiritual aspect of their lives. But their spiritual aspect is so vague. Maybe it's just a cultural conditioning that someone taught them on Sundays, that their material of faith does not serve them at all in moments of trouble. I worked in the jail system for 12 years. And when I received a Catholic individual in the jail system, he asked me for a rosary beads. You know what rosary beads are? A Protestant will come and ask me for the Bible. A Jewish person will come and ask me for the yarmulke. A Muslim individual will come and ask me for the prayer schedule because they follow the movements of the sun at different geographic areas in order to pray. And eventually, I believe if a Spiritist was arrested, he would ask me for the Spirit's book. And to me, all that praying was okay. But my point is that if they were praying this much on the outside, they wouldn't be in jail to begin with. And reason being is because your belief system is supposed to serve you in moments of trouble, in moments of pain. Your faith is not something that you do on a Sunday morning so you can put your best clothes on in order to meet your friends. Your faith is what gives you your perception of life, because your perception dictates your emotions, your actions, your habits, your character, and eventually your destiny. Where you get in life comes from your perception. So if you have a materialistic perception of life, I am not surprised that you're going to kill yourself. And people are indoctrinated to have a materialistic point of view. When children go to school, what do they learn? They learn evolution. We're nothing at all but the reactions of chemicals that have evolved throughout the years, throughout the millennium. This is what they are taught in schools. And if their parents have a religion, it's just a label that they have, something that their parents and grandparents did. So their faith becomes completely useless, and they are indoctrinated in school to believe in evolution only. And we Spiritists, we also believe in evolution. We also believe in science. Our vehicles, our bodies, are nothing but the result of transformation that adapted to the environment. That's what evolution is. But we also believe that something else is evolving besides the body. And that is the mind, the soul, the spirit, that is also in the process of evolution. So from this perspective, Spiritism is a powerful tool that helps us to overcome any obstacles we have in life. If you are a materialistic individual, you think that your tomorrow is uncertain. Therefore, what is my goal? To experience sensory pleasure today. And hence, I have today only, and then experience material sensations. And if I don't have money, I'll be miserable because of that. From the Spiritist perspective, it means we are evolving, we are growing, we are moving forward. And the purpose of your existence is for you to better yourself, intellectually and morally, to become a smart person and to become a good person. That is the purpose of your existence. People tell all the time, I don't know what my mission is. Well, here we go. Your mission is to empower yourself intellectually, to better yourself morally, to become an intelligent person and to become a better person. From this perspective, you're not comparing yourself with other individuals. You are comparing yourself with yourself. If you're 40 years old, you're single, you're not married, there's nothing wrong with that. The comparison that you should make is if you have evolved, if you have progressed, if you have moved forward. And how are you going to judge yourself if you have progressed, evolved, moved forward? Well, by eternal values and not transitory values. What are transitory values? Anything that changes and disappears. Matter. What are eternal values? Things that we store up in our spirit and are taken with us, like knowledge and virtues that we carry. So if you're 40 years old, you're single, no family, have I progressed or not? Well, what was I famous for 10 years ago when I was 30 years old? Well, I was famous for being very lazy. Now, if 10 years have gone by and I'm still a lazy individual, I have not progressed. And that laziness will cause all sorts of pain. How come laziness is a sort of pain, is a source of misery? Because if I'm lazy, it means I'm not doing my part to change my life. I'm expecting other individuals to change in order for my life to improve, and that will never happen. Because people don't change themselves for you. People do change themselves, but for themselves. So I have to do the work. 10 years ago, I was famous for being very envious. Whenever I saw someone doing well, I became very angry towards that individual. And how are you now? Well, I continue to feel and be that way. Whoever I think is better or have things better than I try to belittle, humiliate that person. You have not progressed. Well, 10 years ago, I was a very jealous individual. And how you are? Well, nowadays, I'm not so jealous anymore. I have understood that the person who's next to me, it's someone who's next to me, not someone who belongs to me. So I'm not referring to my wife as my wife, because she's not mine. She's a separate entity of myself. She's temporarily with me, but she does not belong to me. Therefore, she has much freedom as I do. I respect her. I want to make her grow and move forward with her life. And it's not a question of me allowing her to have friends. This is who she is, and I respect her for that. But before, I was a very insecure individual. And even if my wife was talking to another male person, I would be very angry at my wife and at this other individual. So I have progressed. I have evolved. I'm giving you here ways to measure yourself if you have progressed or not. And this is how we base ourselves. This is how we will conclude if we're doing better or not. Not by having things. How many people do we have to see committing suicide? There are very famous. They are very rich. And some of them are even young. You know, these are the three characteristics that people aim for. Being forever young, being famous, and being rich. How many of these we have to watch on TV to realize that these factors do not produce what we call true happiness? It might bring sensory joy, sensory pleasure, but not true happiness. From this perspective, the Spiritist philosophy perspective, if our goal of our existence is to evolve, is to progress, is to move forward, then I have to have 5 aspects of my life in check. Yes, my financial life has to be in check. But also I need balance in my physical aspect of my life, taking care of this physical machine. I need balance with my family, taking care of them. I need balance with my social life, people I relate myself with. And 5th aspect, my spiritual aspect. In other words, my connection with the supreme being of the universe. And if I take well care of this connection right there, everything else should be in check. Because that gives me the purpose of my existence, to take care of all these other aspects of my life. So people often ask me about my profession. A couple of individuals were asking me there about how do I use this information to help me at my job. And the information indeed is very powerful. Because what this philosophy teaches is that you are here having a material experience. And the growth that you make solely depends on how much effort you do to overcome your own challenges. You're not a victim of anything. You are the result of what you have done with yourself in past existences. And you will be tomorrow the result of what you're doing with yourself today. The responsibility is solely placed on your laps, on anyone else. So while I worked in the jail system, I'm glad to say that in the course of 12 years, I did not have a single person killing themselves. Not a single individual killed themselves. When I started in 2006, we had 1,300 inmates. When I left 2 years ago, we had less than 600 inmates. And to me, it was a very powerful experience because I could actually measure the usefulness, the practicability, the effort of this philosophy in people's lives. And after I gained some authority by my work, the captain allowed me to do just about anything in the jail system. So every week I carried 2 lectures, one in English, the other one in Spanish. I distributed books, and because they had nothing else to do, they read it thoroughly, from first page to last page. And that was excellent. The reason being is because I think that nowadays people are reading less and less because they have all sorts of distractions. Now, I'm very concerned at that point. How people will read if they're so distracted with all the social media. They're so focused in knowing about what other people are doing and they forget what they should be doing. But these individuals, they do not have phones in their cell. So all they had was the book and they read it thoroughly. And since this philosophy, it's a body of knowledge. It's not something that you learn in 5 minutes. It's definitely not something that you learn through a talk. We give you here just a piece of information that hopefully will invite you to dive into this knowledge. And think of you, when you read these books, what you're doing, you are investing in your happiness. That's what you're doing. You're not gaining knowledge about some philosophy a French educator created in the 1857. What you're reading are the laws of nature that dictates how you should live your life. And the only reason you have pain and misery in your lives is because you keep trying to break unbreakable laws. That's where pain comes from. Trying to break unbreakable laws. So the book teaches us about moral laws. The laws that control our behavior. Action and reaction, cause effect. What you do has a direct consequence in your own life. So because the inmates were able to read it and dive into the subject, they changed the perception of why they were in jail to begin with. Because before this knowledge, the reason they thought they were in jail was to be punished. And some jail systems are designed for punishment. Because at the bottom of the jail says correction facility, but there is no correction being carried out. Because all they do is they just sit and wait for their judgment. They wait for their trial, which could take some of them years, especially if it's a homicide case. So no corrections were being done. So they think they are there to be punished. And some of them, because they belong to a particular race, they belong to a particular environment, the system preyed on them indeed. And they used to tell me that they were innocent. Some of them said, I didn't do this. But after this knowledge, they came to realize, yes, they were probably innocent in that case, but they were not innocent in life. And reason being is because they must have done something in the past to deserve their current present. So they took the burden of seeing themselves as victims, and they realized, I am responsible for this. And the most useful information they acquired from the Spiritist book is the fact that they know from now on, I cannot go back in my past and change what I have done, but I have all the means to change my present, so I have a different future. And that's not dependent on the judge, on my lawyer, on the prosecutor. That solely depends on my action. And let me get to the study. And they studied a lot. And I'll tell you just one quick story because time is so short. One of the things I did is to work with the gangs. And where I'm from, New Jersey, Union County, gangs proliferate in many numbers. So the jail, since it's a building, gangs are separated by floors. And although they are gangs, it doesn't mean they are stupid, ignorant. They are highly organized. So in a gang, you have your captain, your lieutenant, your sergeant, your soldiers. So what was interesting is that in my talk in the jail system, I had people from different ranks of their gangs and from different gangs at these talks. And there was this specific individual who were in jail with two other guys for a murder charge. They were accused of killing someone. So two of these individuals were able to see the judge before this third individual who was a captain of a gang. And these two individuals told the judge that the third guy did the crime. He's the one who pulled the trigger. And because they were able to convey the information very well through their lawyer, they received a less harsh sentence. They still had to go to prison, but not for the same amount of years the other guy had to go to. So the lawyer came to the third guy and said, you know, this is what took place, and now you are facing a very difficult trial. Most likely, you're going to take the burden of most of the years that you and your friends have done the crime. So he was extremely mad. So mad that he went back to his cell and he wrote a letter to his lieutenant in the prison system to give a welcoming party for those two soldiers. Do you know what the welcoming party is? It's when those two guys get there, they're all supposed to physically attack them, do anything to beat them up, put them in the infirmary. So that's what he wrote as an order from a captain. And after he finished the letter, he looked aside, and there he was, the book, the Gospel according to Spiritism. So he felt compelled to walk towards the book. He kept reading the title, and he decided to open the book up. And he fell on chapter 12. Love your enemies. And in that chapter explains that to love your enemy, it's not to have the emotions that you have for a friend with an enemy. The emotion that you experience with a friend is very different than the emotion they experience with an enemy. With a friend, you have trustworthiness. You have affinity. This is someone that you can share your information. An enemy, on the other hand, is someone who betrayed you. They stabbed your back. How can you have the same emotions? So to love your enemy, it's not to experience love as we experience for a friend, but rather not to allow the hatred to consume you. Because when you hate someone, you drink the poison expecting your enemy to die. The more resentfulness you have against someone, the more you are beating yourself up. So that's what that chapter explains. So he closes the book. He looks at the letter he just wrote, giving them order to beat these two guys up. He rips the letter, throws in the toilet, and flushes the letter out. And at that moment, he bursts into tears. He feels this heavy weight coming off his shoulders. And on the following day, he asked to see me. So here I am in this small little room, talking with him, and the officer is standing outside the door. And he's telling me this story. And obviously, I want to cry with him because it was so powerful, what he was telling me. Because he was in such a state of peace and harmony with himself. So then I looked at him and I said, if I had any power, if I had any legal influence, I would help you to set you free. And then he looks at me and he says, you did not understand a word I said. Obviously I didn't. What do you mean? And he says, Julio, the Spiritist philosophy already set me free. I never felt so free in my life until now. And that is what this knowledge can convey to people, to set people free. For those of you who are watching this, and you think that by killing yourself, you'll be solving your problems, you are completely wrong. Reason being is because you'll only be destroying the machine, the vehicle, and not who you are. You're not this body. You are driving this body. Now, I'd like to give this analogy for those of you who are watching me on the internet and you don't understand the concept. Think about 40 years ago when you're driving a car. Back in those days, you were really driving the car. It's a stick shift. There are no hydraulics. So when you drive this car for 2 hours, you are so tired you just want to go to sleep. All the effort that you're making to drive the car. But nowadays, we have a driverless, self-driving car. These cars, they drive it, speak your direction, but the car goes. Now, how far are we of implanting a microchip in our head so the car reads the direction of our thoughts? All we say is we just think of the direction and the car just goes. This is not futuristic stuff. Nowadays, there are mind-reading machines that actually allow individuals who are playing video games just to play with their mind. They're not touching the joystick. Neuroscientists are constantly making these kinds of experiments, and they have someone using a scalp full of electrodes that captures the individual's brain waves and sends signals to the computer screen, and they control the players of the video games with your thoughts. Now, if you think about your direction, I want to go to New York City, and the car just read, it will be very difficult to distinguish where you start and the car ends, or where the car begins and you end, because you're so interconnected with the machine that you might have the illusion that you are the car. And that's what the body is. The body is such a perfected machine that gives you the illusion that you are it, but you're not the body. You are driving this body. You're driving this machine. So to commit suicide, it is the same as you driving from New Jersey to California. And in the midway, you're so frustrated with the journey that you actually beat up your car. You destroy your car. You grab a baseball bat and you hit your car because you're frustrated with the trip. And now the car is incapable of going to California. But you still have to go to California without the car, which will make the journey way more difficult. So committing suicide is just destroying the car. And you still have to get to your destination. So you're just making things more difficult. So Leon Denis, in the book, The Problem of the Being, he says that to commit suicide is to run away from suffering and to find torture. What you're doing, you are multiplying the source of pain. Because what led you to commit suicide to begin with has not disappeared, but now it's multiplied due to the fact that you have run away from the opportunity to release yourself from the pain. So I strongly suggest to you, if you're not in harmony with this message, find something spiritual to do, because the materialistic mindset will lead you to commit suicide. You're not who you are. You're not the machine that you're wearing. You're way more important than that. A spirit in evolution. So since time is so scarce, I'll finish with this story. And obviously it is a story, not reality in life. There's a story about this small bird that lived in a forest with other animals. And one day, the forest is caught on fire. And all the animals run away from the fire, and they're standing from a safe distance. And this small bird is looking at the forest, the trees, everything he lived for, burning into ashes. So he says to himself, I cannot just sit here and watch everything I lived for being burned down to ashes. I must do something. And indeed he did. He started to fly to find a source of water. And he found a small lake. So when he saw this body of water, he flew as fast as he could. He got his wings wet, opened his little beak, and flew towards the fire. And as he flew towards the fire, he felt the flames. So then he gained altitude. And from really up high, he shook his wings, opened his little beak, and a tiny droplet of water fell on this fire. He flew back again, saw the lake, dived into it, got his wings wet, filled his little beak, and flew as fast as he could towards the fire. Felt the heat, gained altitude, shook his wings, opened his little beak, and a tiny droplet of water fell on the fire. And he kept doing this, and all the other animals, do you know what they did? They started laughing. They were laughing so hard they had stomach cramps. Look at this guy. He's trying to kill all that fire with single droplets of water. But this bird he kept going anyway, and he was flying as fast as he could. The more fire he saw, the faster he flew. And the story goes that the gods saw his effort, and because of the small bird's perseverance, their eyes filled with tears. The tears rolled down their cheek. The tears became the rain, and the rain killed the fire. What is the moral of the story? Well, this small bird teaches us so many things. For one, you achieve something great by doing something small every day. What you want to run away from and commit suicide could be your opportunity to develop yourself intellectually and morally. By running away from the challenges, you are limiting yourself not to experience the great joy of achieving something great. Second lesson. All the other animals were standing there not doing anything about it. What that means, the right thing to do should not be based on what everybody else is doing, because everybody else could be wrong. It's not important what they're doing, it's important that you fulfill your obligation. And that's lesson number 3. What's important is what I do. What everybody else is doing, it's up to their responsibility. But my responsibility is to do my part. Fourth and biggest lesson of the story. If someone talks very highly of you, you're not going to get better. If someone talks very low of you, you're not going to get worse. You are who you are, not other people's opinion. And through our social media, we give so much value to what others are saying about us, or how our lives are based on what other people are doing. We are using the wrong measurement device to see how we're doing. You are who you are, not other people's opinion. In closing, I would like to say that the Spiritist philosophy tells us that one of the most efficient tools for us to get out of our own misery is to help those who are miserable. And why? That's because when you help someone, now we have a completely different set of comparison. You see, whenever we are going through rough experiences, we look at those who are doing better than us. And we look at them only from one perspective, and that is the financial perspective. If I look at those who are doing worse than me, that changes the way I perceive my own problems. Strictly financially, let's say someone has $40,000 in their bank account, and I have zero. I think my debts are unpayable. My problems are unsurmountable. But if I look at someone who actually owes $20,000, I look at my zero bank account balance, and I say to myself, I'm not so bad as I thought I was. Look at that guy. Look how he's handling his problems. So this is why the Spiritist philosophy tells us to help other people. Because in the process of helping other people, we will see how much we have to count on our behalf. This helps us to change our prayers at night. Whoever deity you believe, and we Spiritists, we understand there is a supreme intelligence. When we pray, we're not praying because this deity has a need to hear what we have to say. When we pray, it has nothing to do with the deity. When we pray, it has to do with us. To be thankful, to be grateful. Thanksgiving is coming up. What is to be grateful? To be grateful is to do a mental inventory of the things that we have. Because when there is the moment to ask in our prayer, we will see there is little to ask. And why? Because we realize how much we have. We're so concentrated in what we lack that we don't see that the things that we have. To be grateful is to be aware of the things that we have. So for those of you who are watching us through Facebook, before you are so focused on your problem, think of the things that you have. Because believe it or not, you could be living someone's dream at this moment, especially if you are physically healthy. My current job is in hospice. What that means, the doctor gave this individual 6 months to live. That's their prognosis. And sometimes they are 30 years old, 40 years old. They are relatively young, but this is the prognosis they get. So if you're 45 and you're single, if you're 45 and you don't have any job, there is someone who's 45 right now who believes that your misery will be their dream. Concentrate on what you have so you're not concentrated in so much that you lack. Thank you, God, for the opportunity to speak. And to you all, thank you for listening.
Great job. Thank you so much for your. All right, so we're going to switch gears a little bit. We have, I'm happy to say, another musical interlude, if I may. Bella and Dan are going to do something for us. And this is, are you, oh, I'm sorry, it's Fred. My apologies, Fred. Where is he? Oh, there he is. This is something that you just put together in the last 10 minutes or so?
Yes.
So what are you going to do?
It's a song called The Heart of the Universe,
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful.
which we felt inspired to do.
Excellent. So while you do that, now everybody has paper and pens at your tables, right? So go ahead if you have any questions. We're going to do the Q&A after this. And please, if you'd like to keep it anonymous, by all means, do that. That's totally fine. We have received some Facebook from questions from our Facebook audience, so we're going to have those as well. So please go ahead. We'll be collecting your questions if you have them, and then we'll get the panel back up here to answer some of those questions. So I'll turn it over then to these folks.
Hi. So I've always been a big advocate of how much music helps us heal. Because sometimes we spend so much time in our minds, and that's important. But music helps us feel something. It helps us connect to God in a special way. And so I hope that this moment we can all do that together. B.
So I think we'll go ahead, if it's all right, we'll start with the folks that have the questions in the room. So I'll go ahead and read those questions, and then we'll figure out who would like to respond, or we can have everybody respond. All right, first question is there a book you would recommend for someone who has attempted suicide to bring hope?
Well, on Cardiac Reading for Teens, we've read through the Spiritist book together. We've also started reading through the Gospel according to Spiritism. And I think they're both very useful, and there's so many broad ranges of topics, which is helpful because everyone that is having these struggles and are committing suicide, it's their own personal reasons, and they're so different. So I think a book that is broad, like the Spiritist book or like the Gospel according to Spiritism, that has so many topics, you can find that specific topic that is relating to what you need, and that even might be doing a prayer and then just opening to a random page, and like Drew's example from before, like that might be exactly the message you need in that moment.
Isn't it funny how that kind of stuff happens?
Yeah.
Just when you need it. I don't know why that is. It just happens to be there. Good. Anyone else with a recommendation?
Yeah, I would recommend the book Memoir of a Suicide. That's Memoir of a Suicide. So this is right, Julie? That's how the title? Yes. And it's by Ivone Amaral Pereira. Ivone Amaral Pereira. I will help you after.
First of all, let me explain that whenever we are invited to this kind of event, one should, as a speaker, one should ask ourselves, who is my audience? Now, my audience is not necessarily you guys who are here. The reason being is because I know relatively what you know. But the audience here is to spread this information for individuals who are not informed of what the Spiritist philosophy is. And that's what the internet is for. Do you understand what I'm saying? So having that in mind, everything that I say is towards those individuals who never heard about what we're doing here. So you guys are not necessarily the audience or the individuals who are watching the video. So having that said, the Spirit's book, it is a book with so much knowledge that a scholar said that if he had spent 100 years reading that book alone, he would still find material for study. Because the book, you don't read it with your eyes. You read it with the amount of experience that you have, with the knowledge that are in you. So if you read the book once, you absorb from the book an X amount of information. But when you're reading the book for the second time, you're not reading it with the same eyes. You're now decoding the same information with a new set of knowledge, which comes from the first reading. So what that means, the book becomes richer and richer as you read it. So if you are listening to us for the first time, and your topic that you want to understand is suicide, my suggestion, you go directly to the topic of suicide in the Spirit's book. And it's on part 4 of the Spirit's book, Hopes and Solace. That part 4 is divided into 2 chapters. First chapter is pain and suffering here on the earth. And on the 6th subtitle of that first chapter, of the 4th part of the Spirit's book, it talks about suicide. And Allan Kardec asks straight up, why is it that some people commit suicide? And the highly evolved spirits who answer those questions said that reason number 1 is due to idleness. Reason number 2 is lack of conviction. Reason number 3 is satiety. What is idleness? Idleness is when I'm not busy. So when people have too much time in their hands, that's when they think of stupid things. So in the jail system, I never saw an inmate who came and became a prisoner because he was busy at his job. It was always a moment of leisure that they did stupid things. So too much idleness in our mind, it leads to all sorts of room for us to think about the things that we don't like about us or about life. So what's the solution to that? Get busy. Reason number 2, lack of conviction. No one can give you conviction. There is the result of you studying and understanding life through your own lenses. So in the Spiritist book, you will never read something like this. Believe in this because I told you so. It tells you to ponder. It asks you to use your own logic and reasoning for you to find your own conviction about the stuff that you're reading. In satiety, it's actually the sensation that we never have enough. So for those who have aquarium, for example, fish in the aquarium, if you give them the entire jar of food, they will eat until they explode. Why? Because they don't have a sense of satiety. So people don't have, when they don't have a sense of satiety, there's never enough, or they can easily get anything they want, they die from boredom. So more people die of boredom than difficulties, because difficulties in life is a way to push us from our limits to our potential.
Great, wonderful. Thank you for the response. Oh wow, this next question is really tough for me to ask because it's written in Portuguese. So, do we have anybody who speaks Portuguese? Oh, good. Actually, if you'd like to, why don't you look at that and I'll go to the Facebook questions and I'll answer that if you want to, or if you're ready to go.
I got the question, yes, but it's a very specific question
Okay.
about their personal lives.
Got it.
Get to the Facebook question.
Okay, let's do that. Very good. All right, so the first Facebook question is, today someone told me a sad situation. A son of a religious friend, 11 years old, is harming himself and hiding from his family. Why? Our young people are doing this in massive. So I have to assume that the question is, why do young people harm themselves?
I would say one of the answers that I believe is that they carry a lot of pain in themselves. And sometimes work with children that some of them do that is because they want that pain to lessen. So when they harm themselves, in that moment, it lessens that pain that they carry inside.
So the physical pain is masking the emotional pain?
Yeah, and somehow they feel like they are in control of whatever situation that sometimes they cannot control. And therefore, that's one of the many reasons.
Great, thank you. The next question, for someone who is in despair, feels hopeless, how can they better understand the concept of God to see things differently? Absolutely. For someone who is in despair, a lot of pain, and feels hopeless, there's no hope, how can they better understand the concept of God to see things differently? How can they turn that around?
Well, like we've been saying, and since this is through Spiritism's event, reading through those books and learning them, but also something for it that I always try and practice is not only reading the words, trying to understand them, but then seeing how that positive message might apply to your life, how you might be
what I would say to that individual. Most people concept of God, it's an anthropomorphic concept, meaning that they believe that God has human being qualities. And reason being is because we have heard through the Old Testament that we're created in God's image. But what has happened throughout history is that we have created God in our image. So we are a very angry individual. We project that and we say that God is very angry. We are very partial individuals, meaning that I prefer certain people over others. And we project that into God and we say that God loves this kind of people and not that kind of people. So God, with his human qualities, is less of God altogether. So this knowledge, the Spiritist philosophy, first it tells us that we don't know what God is. We have an idea of what God is, and that comes from question number 1 of the Spirit's book. God is the supreme intelligence of the universe, the first cause of all things. But it doesn't explain if God is a spirit, if God is an energy, but it simply says that God is the cause of all things. And when you understand through logic and reasoning a scientific law that says that there is no effect without a cause, we conclude that the universe cannot come from nothingness. To claim that there is no entity, to claim that there is no creating entity, it's to say the same as nothingness was able to create something, which is the universe. And we don't have the time to get to all the scientific part, but there is this whole argument about universal constants. These are physical laws that make life possible, physical constants. And they are so finely tuned with one another to make life possible that if just one of them is changed just a little, life as we know it would not be able to exist. So in order to counter this argument, the materialists have said that instead we have a multitude of the universe, which is also known as the multiple universe theory. But then we could trace back the argument and said, well, but what created those other universes? So we have to have a creating entity. Now, materialists, they reject immediately the religious point of view of creationism because people say that Jesus is the one who created the universe, or Allah, or Buddha, some other humane entity that created all that. Now, obviously, the observation of the universe makes them immediately reject that idea, because someone who was here in flesh could not have created all of this. And out of the infinite amount of planets around the universe, how come that God chose Earth to come here and die in such a way? And what they fail to understand is that Christ himself never proclaimed to be God, because he always referred himself as being a messenger, someone who was sent. Actually, that's what the word Christ stands for, the one who was sent, the missionary. So he never claimed to be a God. So if you speak with the physicists about an entity that created the universe, obviously that entity, it's not a God that religions speak of. And that's exactly what the Spiritism refers to, because it does not claim to know what God is. It simply says that it, not she or he, it exists. So when we are invited to think about these concepts through rationality and logic, that gives us conviction. Conviction leads me to hope. I have certainty that indeed there is a supreme intelligence, and this supreme intelligence did not make a mistake in creating me. My life is meant for a higher purpose, and my objective in life is to work towards that purpose. So as a result of this understanding, there is a supreme intelligence. I have conviction that my life is much more than just getting things, that gives me hope. It gives me resilience. What is resilience? Our ability to withstand blows and keep walking, overcoming our challenges. So that conviction gives me the certainty that my tomorrow will be better than today. And whatever is going on today, I'm able to overcome it because I know I'm meant to be a better version of myself. That's the goal here. So everything that we label as painful experiences, everything that we label as trouble, through the lenses of this philosophy, they become now opportunities for growth. So through those lenses, we actually welcome challenges and difficulties because we see them as stepping stones to become a better version of ourselves. And that's what gives us harmony and peace, which is the foundation to happiness.
Oh, great answer. Thank you very much. All right, the next question. Can each of you share a difficult experience or a moment that Spiritism helped you?
Ooh, there are so many. Okay, as a little girl, I used to hear things, see things, and most of them were very scary. And even negative thoughts as just kill yourself, or just harm yourself, or others. And I was introduced to Spiritism through my mom, thank you Mom, at 14 years, at 12 to 13 years of age. And that changed my life because then I understood that what was happening to me, even though I opened the doors for it to come, because we are in control of what happens in our lives as well. But I understood there was other influences that was happening as well. And I was able to manage that. It didn't go away, it didn't cure it, but I'm able to manage it. And then also, even as a mother, there's, as a medium myself, there's a lot of negative thinking that comes. And you're able to just deal with those negative thoughts. And Spiritism has helped me tremendously. Gospel at Home, I highly recommend for all of us, at least once a week. I would say 10-15 minutes if you don't have 30 minutes to do. Do a prayer, open a book, read a positive lesson, chapter, because that harmonizes also your house, the psychosphere of your house. And it's a life-changing, so I'm very grateful to Spiritism.
So Spiritism has definitely impacted my life greatly. I was practically born into Spiritism, so since the age of 3, I was going to the Spiritist Center, and now I'm 20, so I guess it's 17 years of Spiritism. And I think it's impacted me that always growing up with that, I've always had that background knowledge of Spiritism, so when other people might not have this spiritual outlet or spiritual teachings to turn to, I always had that to know the deeper meaning, and not that I'm close to knowing everything and not that I knew like everything about Spiritism, but I always knew that knew that there was something else just beyond what was happening in that situation. And also just having my parents in Spiritism, they always just even without saying like, oh, this is from Spiritism, they always put those positive messages into my life, so I think that helped me.
Well, this philosophy helps me in all different aspects of my life. And in all the questions that we get here from Facebook or from the audience, the question I would like to pose then is, how are you feeding yourself spiritually? Reason being is because when we eat, what are we doing here? We are providing nutrients to our cell. in order for us to not only survive, but have a strong immune system. When we eat stuff that we shouldn't, as a result, the cells are not getting the nutrients that they need, and our immune system gets weak. And as a result, opportunistic diseases make us sick. All of us have many viruses in our body right now. And how come we don't get sick? That's because our immune system is fighting those diseases. So if your immune system gets weak, you get sick. The same goes for our spiritual hunger. If we're not feeding ourselves spiritually, daily, weekly, monthly, we get spiritually starved. And when we have spiritual starvation, our spiritual immune system gets weak. And when it gets weak, we have opportunistic diseases that comes up. Depression, anxiety, sadness, misery, unhappiness. That's because we're not feeding ourselves spiritually. And to think that we work 40 hours per week minimum to feed our bodies, to have a roof over our head. And how much are we feeding ourselves spiritually? So if we're not feeding ourselves spiritually, what is the natural consequence of that? Sickness. Sickness of the soul. An exacerbation of our envy, exacerbation of our jealousy, of our pride. Everything that makes us emotionally disturbed. And the continuation of that is, moral, spiritual death. And what is moral and spiritual death? Moral and spiritual death is to live for today, and I don't care about tomorrow. I have no reason to wake up tomorrow morning. So in the jail system, and I am sorry if I keep referring to the jail system, but that's where I found the application of this material in other people's lives. I saw a lot of dead people. And what's my definition of dead people? Because in Spiritism, we don't believe in death. What we call death is nothing but you leaving this machine, your vehicle, your envelope. Death is actually to be alive and not knowing what your purpose is. So then you don't know what's the point of waking up on the following day. These people are spiritually dead. And why? Because they do not feed themselves spiritually. Now, for some people to feed themselves spiritually could be listening to music, peaceful music every day. Some other people is to practice mindfulness every day. But for us who are here, we feed ourselves through the Spiritist philosophy. And it has all the nutrients that one needs to overcome any moral sickness that we have. But beyond that, to achieve fulfillment. Because it helps us to develop our potential as eternal spirits. So in that way, this philosophy has helped me in all different aspects of my life. My professional life, my familial life, my physical life, and definitely my social life. Because I choose very wisely who I bring into my intimacy, my personal friends.
Great, thank you. And excellent answers. All right, the question, the final question we have from Facebook, folks, are how can the family deal with someone that does not have hope or expectations in life and that has already tried suicide? That's a tough one.
I think love unconditionally. If the person cannot see any positivity in life, be that positivity in their lives. Live life in a way that you can vibrate that liveliness, vibrate that comfort, vibrate those difficult moments, vibrate harmony, resilience. And then I would highly recommend prayers, fraternal counseling, gospel home if you can do it every day. If you're a spiritist, if you're not a spiritist, go to your religion institution, pray. If you're not religious, positive thinking, positive affirmation, be in contact with nature. And then that vibration naturally will reach that person. And I think that it's really the first step.
Well, I'm only 20, so I don't have my own family, but it's not like my family. I think I agree with what you're saying, even with like as a teenager to other teenagers, with your friends and having those positive thoughts towards other people, or even having that positivity and showing that spiritism, showing all that positivity that you have can impact that person that's around you.
There is a story of a farmer who wanted to purchase more bovine. And there was this river dividing the two farms that neighbored one another. So he decided to buy 50 cows from his neighbor. And when the purchase was done, they had so much trouble bringing the bovine to his land. And the reason being is because when they saw the river, the animals resisted crossing the river. So the farmer said, we have to find a solution for this. And what they did, they actually got one of the calves and forcefully, with a rope, crossed the calf over the river. And while the other cows saw the calf being forced to cross the river, they all followed the calf. And eventually they all on the other side of the farm. At times, people in our family get sick to serve as a calf to bring us to the right side of life, because it helps the family change. And the reason being is because we are invited by life to change through love or through pain. What is to change through love? It's exactly what we're doing here. We are spending our Saturday afternoon speaking of elevated things. It doesn't cause us any pain. It's listening and applying the message. That's love. But when we refuse to listen to love, here comes pain to say exactly what love was trying to say. And most people, they are so stubborn that they wait for pain in order to change. I'll give you a quick example. Let's say someone is 18 years old and they're smoking. And here comes the mother and says, my son, please do not smoke. Here comes the girlfriend and says, why are you smoking? I don't like your breath when you kiss me with all that nicotine in your mouth. He watches a movie and the movie says, do not smoke. All these are messages from life telling this guy, do not smoke. Now, he refuses to listen to that, and now he's 45 years old. He persistently coughs. There is some back pain, and he doesn't know what's going on. He sees his physician. The physician says, I'm sorry, but you have lung cancer. And now immediately this guy drops the cigarette. And why does he immediately quit cigarette? Because he learned he has cancer. So pain came to say exactly what love was trying to say. But he refused to listen to love. So we don't have to wait for that moment. But what I would say to this person who has someone that is very depressed at their home and wants to commit suicide, I would ask this person to seek medical attention first. Because although medications are not the solution to the problem, it's part of the solution, part of. Because in order for the individual to stop depression, they need to change their way of thinking. If they want to feel depressed and they have a very depressive outlook on life, there is no amount of medication that they would take that will make them stop to feel depressed. So seek medical attention. And then second, if this person does not want to change, the person who is there with them, light up your own light. Think of your house as a place of darkness. Nobody knows where is the entrance and nobody knows where is the exit. But if you change, if you start reading positive material, if you elevate your thoughts on a daily basis, you pray, you seek spiritual health, emotional health, you become the and other people will see the entrance and the exit. But I'll take this argument to a third level, and the level is that if this happens to be my son or my daughter, a brother, I have to consider through the Spiritist lenses that these people are not mine. You know, my daughter is not my daughter. My daughter is actually my sister in humanity. You know, my son is not my son. He is a brother in humanity because we're all sons and daughters of the supreme intelligence of the universe. And with that said, you have your free will. If you're 22 years old and you want to make certain things in your life, I cannot stop you from exercising free will. All I can do, I can talk to you and help as much as I can. But this person will use their free will to help the person who asked the question. I'm trying to help them understand that this person that you're trying to help does not belong to you. It's God's. As a result, if they make that wrong decision, all you can do is pray for them because they use their free will in a very wrong way. But we cannot force people from using their free will. Now, if someone is 4 years old, you can tell them what to do, 10 years old. As long as they're living under your roof, you have full authority over them because you're paying for their living, therefore you tell them what to do. May I also add something here?
Absolutely.
Since we're talking about food for thought, and I feel very sorry to say this in public, believe me, I do. I refer to having spiritual food and receiving something that is positive. So, for the longest, people have asked me to create a YouTube channel and have small talks. So I created a YouTube channel called Spiritism Talks. S-P-I-R-I-T-I-S-M, Spiritism Talks. Everything together, Spiritism Talks. And every Monday morning, I upload a new video. And it's 5 minutes. And what am I telling you in that video? That Allan Kardec was born in 1857, the Spirit's book was published in 1857, or he was born in 1804. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying, I'm giving you food for thought. Because if anyone talk, a spiritist talk, and the material is not applicable for the person on the following day, it's useless material. So it's 5 minutes, tops, and it's food for thought. And I ask you to subscribe to the channel because YouTube has an algorithm that the more subscribers you have, the more, if anyone is searching for this kind of material, we'll find that. But I have teenagers who came up to me and says, Julio, you're so out of date with your YouTube channel. You got to get to Instagram. So I created an Instagram page in the name of the people who are young. So it's my name, Julio Carvalho, Spiritism Talks. That's the Instagram page. So it embarrasses me to do this because it looks like I'm doing the self-promotion here, but if I would say it, I will.
No, I'm so glad you did that because if this is the first
You read
time
my thoughts. I was gonna ask
Oh,
for
yeah.
him to say. He just read my thoughts.
Well, good. Yeah, I was going to say that if you're hearing Julio speak for the first time, I've heard him speak many times. He is very, very good. I'm so glad to know that. And what a perfect time of the week, first thing on a Monday morning, to have something like that. So I'm really glad that you brought that. You should do TED Talks. That should be the next thing that you do, I think. So we have one more question, I think, from the Portuguese one.
I think I answered that question.
Oh, you did?
When I said, this is someone that has a child with ADHD. It's a complex question. For reason being, it's because in the beginning of the 2000s, pharmaceutical companies saw that if we label all children as much as we can with ADHD, there will be more medication sold. Ritalin, for example. And when the child is growing up and they are being introduced with these chemicals in their brain, one can only imagine the kind of damage it would do to that little brain. You know, looking back in my own childhood, I think I would diagnose all my friends with ADHD because we couldn't stop still. I remember climbing on trees from tree and doing, we couldn't stop still. But we have many ways to channel our energy with a playful youth. So I am not saying that teachers are to blame. I'm not saying that. But at times, children are started on this process of being diagnosed in the school system. And reason being is because you have a teacher that's overloaded with work, and there is 2 or 3 children that cannot stand still. Now, if you have an active children that learn through touching things, you would not make that child sit. So here you are, a tired teacher, you have overloaded work, 40 children in your classroom, and you want that child to sit quiet still. What you're going to do, you're going to call the social worker at the school system, social worker will call the parent, and what is the easiest way out of this? Give the child some calming book in order for the child to sit quiet and still. So it has to be a combination of things. And one of the most important one is how are you feeding your child spiritually? There are so many psychiatric theories why children become with attention deficit disorder. One of them, for example, is by watching TV and the constant rapid change of cartoons, that excites the brain to a certain extent that the child cannot sit still. And they go on with these theories, and at the end of the day, it's medication. And we're not against medication, but what we're saying that medication is not the solution. Maybe the child is a calf who is being pulled to the other side so parents can follow. Meaning because now that this parent had this kind of trouble, they will seek help, spiritual help, and that would help the parent change themselves. But I would like to close with a Spiritist argument. Our children are not our children. Our children are God's children. But they are indeed individuals that we have lived with in past reincarnations. And the reason why we're together now is to atone our mistakes that we have done against Him. So let's say in my past reincarnation, I have betrayed someone. I have stole from them. I even have murdered them. Because I have broken a law of love by killing them, now that I am in the spiritual world, I will be invited to reincarnate and accept my son, the person that I have hated, the person that I have betrayed. So this difficult son of mine is someone who unconsciously is asking me to repair the mistakes I have done towards him. So with that interpretation of my situation, I'll have much patience with my troubled son. Because now I know this is someone that I have to atone my mistakes with. I have to repair what I have done towards this person. So this is how this philosophy, the Spiritist philosophy, helps you to have much tolerance for the imperfections of others. Because it tells you, you somehow were responsible for this broken relationship. So now, it's your opportunity to fix it. And if the mother, or if the father, they do everything on their behalf to help this child, and still the child grows up to be an unresponsible adult, keep in mind that this is not your child, but God's child. And that all your love that you have given to them, and all the lessons that you have taught them, it's in there, but as seeds. And once the emotional environment becomes conditioned to make the seeds flourish, you will flourish. Because a well-taught lesson, a well-planted seed in a child's heart will always flourish. Not in our time, but in God's time.
Great, thank you very much. So that concludes all of the questions we have. Thank you, all three of you, very, very much. Great job on this and also in your presentations today. So round of applause, please, for Okay, so at this point I'd like to invite Fred Gouveia up, who is going to give us a testimonial. brilliant. Fred was our violinist today. Did an amazing job in that. So I'm anxious to hear what he has to say. So I'll turn it over. I'm going to give you the talking stick. Thank you.
So Lucy asked me to just say a few words about my personal experience, and for most of us that came across Spiritism when we didn't have Spiritism in our family, it came through pain, and my pain was one that led me to try to commit suicide. And I tried to jump out of the building where I used to live with my parents around a time where I was going through tremendous amount of pain for not accepting who I was. And much of that pressure came from outside. And I was actually talking to Laura about this on the way here. The society impositions on what a man is supposed to behave like and what a woman is supposed to behave like, and all the expectations that the family, the parents impose on the children. So as I was growing up and realizing that I was gay, I didn't accept that. I couldn't deal with it. It's too much pressure. And in fact, my best friend from childhood that we used to be friends as early as 3rd grade. At the age of 30, he died of a drug overdose because it was suicide. He killed himself of a drug overdose. And for him, it was easier to justify to himself and to his family and to society that he had a drug problem. It was easier for everybody to accept that the son had a drug problem than to come out publicly that he was gay. And he took the route of self-destruction through drugs, and that was really painful for me to witness this path that he took. And in my height of desperation, around the age of 19, 20, there's also something that also triggered my desire to kill myself, was that my mother discovered magazines of naked men. And I was not ready to face that. When she discovered those things in my room, she confronted me. And I was not ready to come out with it. So that confrontation that triggered the desperation that led me to go into a severe depression. And in a few times I tried to jump out the window. And so they locked the doors and they hid the knives. And they took me to Brazil for 6 months out of college so that they could figure out what was going on with me. And it was around that time that, out of the blue, I just asked my mother, who is Allan Kardec? Out of the blue, and she said, I don't know, but they drink some water and they have something that they do with their hands. Let's go find out. And that's it, and that's how I started in Spiritism, and then I found in Spiritism all the questions in the Spirit's book that brought me the comfort and the realization of what I had. And fast forward 10 years, I had the feeling that it was the right time for me personally to come out. But that took 10 years of a journey of self-acceptance, self-love, self-forgiveness. So those are my words that I'd like to share. That's it.
Thank you. Wow. So then this time I'd like to welcome Dulcinette up to offer the closing for this. How did you all do today? Did you learn something new? Yeah. Yeah, we always do when these. Are you going to come next year for the 8th? Yes. Yes. Dulce, you got that planned yet? Next year? Do you have the date for next year yet?
Not yet.
Oh. Would you like the microphone?
Yeah.
I'll give it to you.
We have our Georgian who's gonna come, and she's going to give us some feedback, how helping us in case we get too stressed during the day. She's gonna help us how to relax with meditation and some breathing. So please, Georgiana, join us on the stage. Come on. After that, we have then with the closing. And
let's meditate.
I wasn't sure what Dulcie wanted for our little time together, so I wasn't sure if you wanted to speak about how yoga and stretching can elevate our mood, help us to feel more comfortable in our body. just to be more in the present moment. So these are some of the things that I was talking to Dulcie about why someone may want to learn stretching and or meditation. Yoga is a practice, a very experiential practice. So I had in mind that maybe we could all do a few stretches. All right. Is everybody okay with that? I figured out we would do some stretches from your chair because I have a feeling maybe not everybody wants to get up. So I'm going to grab a chair and we're going to do our stretches in the comfort of your own spot. So one of the reasons why yoga is very powerful, I'm going to take my shoes off because I wasn't sure what bedding we were in, so I'm going to just be comfortable. Because that's one of the benefits of yoga, that when you're stretching, there's a lot of physiological things that happen by just positioning. So anyway, so I'm going to take you through like a 5-10 minute experience. So my invitation to you first is I'd like everybody to close your eyes for a moment, and you're going to take a few breaths. And you're just going to try and let your feet ground into the floor. And you're going to take a few moments to gloss over your internal body. Wherever you have any discomfort, just allow yourself to observe it for a few seconds. And so now I invite you to bring your hands together in a rubbing motion to create energy. And you're just going to lavish that spot with some pure good intentions to feel better, to be more comfortable. And this is part of the practice of yoga, is learning to generate and change the direction of what's happening for you. So I'm going to do it along with you. So creating lots of energy. And then take a moment to place your hands wherever you need to, whether it's your eyes, your neck, your shoulders. Just take a moment to feel and give to yourself. Allowing the cells of the body to absorb that high frequency of love and energy that you're generating and giving to yourself. And then softly relaxing the hands down. And we're going to do a stretch. If you can't hear me, you can observe. So we're going to do a stretch where you're going to reach up as high as you can. Reaching up. And then you're going to just gently let it all jump. You're going to softly come up. You're going to reach up as high as you can. And let it all. You can do 2 or 3 more and just allow your head to drop on the last one so you're just hanging like a rag. And you can add a sound, get rid of the day tightness. And let go. One more. And just allow the head to drop. Allow the shoulders to drop. So whenever you bring the head lower than the heart, you're going to allow the parasympathetic system to kick in. So this is the relaxation neurotransmitters. So just allow the head to drop. And so this is something you can do just 1 minute a day when you need to shift your energy. And then very slowly coming up 1 vertebrae at a time. Very slow. yoga is very helpful. It's that it's a practice that you come back to each day. So you start to look forward when you cultivate a practice, like, oh, what's going to happen the next day? And so, since this is a forum for suicide prevention, a lot of times people feel they don't have anything to look forward to. So if you can start to think about the idea of cultivating a practice where you come back to and you're like, what's the change going to be? So this is we're going to do a balancing pose. When you do balancing poses, you're kind of forced to be in the present moment. Because a lot of times if we, have anxiety, we're like thinking about all the unknowns in the future. So when we do balancing, you're in the present moment. You can't think about the past, like, oh, I said that, and oh, what happened? So we're going to do a balancing pose, and the purpose is to help us stay more in the present moment. And I'm going to show you different levels so that you can see when you come back tomorrow, if you want to do it again, that there's a evolution. So we're going to do 3 rounds. I'll demonstrate, and then I'm going to invite you to join in. So I'm going to come onto my toes, and I'm going to look over my shoulder. And then I'm going to gently come back down. And then I'll come onto my toes and look over my shoulder. And then I'll gently come back. If you don't feel comfortable with this, you can just gently look over your shoulder. You don't have to do everything. Part of the practice is being gentle with yourself and just accepting where you are in that present moment. So I invite everybody to try 1 to 3 rounds and just do the best you can. So you're going to come onto your toes, use the chair to support you, and softly look all the way over. Gently coming back to center. Coming up, breathing in, looking over your shoulder. Beautiful, coming back to center, and then do 2 more rounds at your own pace. Have fun with it. Maybe close your eyes, maybe use your eyes more. Maybe each repetition go a centimeter further. So, if you want to try this, if you continue to practice, maybe a week or 2 from now, I'm going to just show you the next step. So you would bring your feet together, and now you would do it without the chair, and you would gently lift up and look over your shoulder. Come on up, open the arms wide. So you have a little thing to play with each day. So a lot of times people, we pick up in life, sometimes we pick up habits that are a fast track to feeling better. So I'm going to show you a healthy way to decompress. So a lot of people, I need to decompress, I gotta go to the bar, So here's a different decompression. You're going to find a chair, or you can use a surface, in the kitchen. And I'm going to demonstrate, and then I'm inviting you to try it. You're going to walk out to a point that you feel comfortable with. Today it may be here, tomorrow it may be here. Eventually, you want to go into like a table position. You're going to allow the heart, the belly, everything to sway towards the ground. You're going to press the tailbone towards the back wall. And then if you'd like to add to it, you can gently bend the knees a bit. And then straighten the knees and push the tailbone out. So I invite you to play with this motion for a minute. The key word here is to play. You're going to start to feel your own body and knowing what feels good, and allow that intuition to guide you. And again, each day is a new day, and as time goes on, you start to feel the alignment of the spinal column where you need to decompress. Because in life, every experience, emotional especially, gets lodged in the body. So you ever hear the issues are in the tissues? So this is like at the end of the day, you can decompress and clean it all out. So was that? Yeah. So those were the 3 stretches I wanted to share with everybody. I believe, Dulcie, you said 10 minutes?
Yeah.
Is that 10 minutes?
Yes.
That was fun. I'm ready to do another 7 hours. Very, very interesting. Thank you very much for that. We're going to ask now Dulcinette to come up and share some experiences. Do you need 2 microphones?
We need 2 microphones, yes.
Oh, I got it. Thank you. Okay.
So, this way. Thank you for, I never have the time to thank you, each one of you, for being here. This event actually starts at Divine Light. One time after the Tri-State Federation, Julie did a beautiful presentation about suicide. And he spoke about a statistic. The number was January, I think, was our first meeting at Divine Light. And while he was doing their presentation, I was very sad about it. And then our mentor said, look, you have 4 people who are already committed suicide in your family, and you almost did. Let's go do this event. I have great connection to Julio. I love him a lot. And I said, well, this man is the pillar of this event. He didn't know that, but he is. So that's why he is here every year. And in May, we have also for teens. And I didn't know how that would be, this event. And Danielle said, Lucy, we should do another event, and it should be in New York, because Long Island is too far away. So I called Julia, and Julia said, well, I'm in. At the time, his son was very ill, very sick. And he said, Lucy, I'll be there. And I have so much gratitude for the friends that God put in my life. That is my friends. I choose them. And I invite each one of you to do the same. And this year, in my birthday, when I turned 50, interesting enough, I don't know how, a Nexus song just came out, right? And I was blowing my candle, and I just heard a voice, did you see, if you had died, you don't have accomplished so much. And I said, could be Mike from the Nexus, tell me that. I said, I'm so glad that you are well. And I was very, very happy for have conquered. Thank you, God, for allowing me to stay. So, thank you for each one of you here to participate. For all the volunteers, for Isabel. Lucy, where is the meeting? We need to start the meeting. Danielle, Lucy, we have to do another band. One is not good enough. For Divine Light to blow the whistles. Did I say right? Good. She's my teacher. My English teacher. So, thank you for Jesus Christ, for being our mother, our beloved brother. Thank you for, I'm going to say the name of the Spirit Center because I never do, Divine Light Society, for Long Island, our Spirit Center, for SGNY, for Mount Vernon, for Virginia Spirit Center. Vanessa always gives us a great support. Thank you for Love and Light from Connecticut, for our beloved Bia. Who says we never thought, right, Bia? You would be here working on Long Island? See how connected we are? Cardiac Radio, always there for us. And for all the speakers. I called Raquel. She said, Lucy, I'll be there. And we spoke to text, and we called each other. And we had other speaker too who should be but couldn't make it. This event, it's very hard to make it. It isn't easy at all. So you should say thank you for your guardian angels for being so strong, intelligent, who brought you guys in here today. It's not easier to be here. And so I would like for my beloved friend, who is my partner, we are doing this beautiful work together. We're going to read all the books from Emmanuel, psychographic by Chico Xavier. So she is the one who read and I make the comment. And it's look good, doesn't it?
Pretty happy with it.
Yes. Okay, could you please read for us?
So I'm going to be reading from Living Spring from the Spirit Emmanuel. The title is Sewing and Construction.
Yes, I will.
And it begins with a passage by Paul, the Apostle Paul. For we are co-workers with God. You are God's field, God's building. By affirming his status of a co-worker of God and describing the Lord's followers and beneficiaries of the gospel as the Lord's field and building, Paul painted the spiritual picture that will always exist on the evolving earth amongst those who already know the divine truth and those who do not know it. If we have received the lighted torch of the gospel for our journey, then we are automatically considered to be co-workers of Jesus' ministry. We are responsible for the sowing and construction of it amongst all those who share the pathway with us. Thus, in essence, we know what service the revelation has in store for us as soon as we approach the Christian light. If we have the Master's blessing in our heart, we are to restore balance to the currents of life wherever we are, helping those who cannot help themselves, seeing for those who cannot see, and hearing for those who cannot hear, so that the work of the divine kingdom may grow, progress, and sanctify all the earth. The work entails sowing and building, which demands everybody's personal effort and goodwill. For according to the apostles' symbolism, a plant needs time and care to grow, and a solid house cannot be built in one day. Wherever we go, however, we see masons who complain about the weight of the brick and the sand, and farmers who gripe about having to fertilize and protect the fragile plant. Nevertheless, the lesson of the gospel leaves no room for doubt. If you already know Jesus' benefits, then you are one of his co-workers in the vineyard of the world and in the construction of the human spirit for the eternal life. Press on in the endeavor that was entrusted to you, and fear not. If faith is our crown of light, then working for others is our daily blessing.
Isn't that beautiful? It's so perfect. Jim Story, thank you. Thank you for being my ex-husband.
Thank you.
And be my love friends. So, I'm gonna go very fast. I don't know, how do I do this, Bella? I'm gonna go very fast. All right. We're not gonna have time for that. I got this one. Okay. Wait. So I was supposed to do something. Of course, we don't have time, but I'm gonna try to, because my brain's not as fast as this slide moved there. Was 5 slides behind. Well, as we all know, Brazil is the heart of the world. This is the line. But let's not be sad. United States is the brain, and also lead us to freedom and liberation. But if you would think about the cross, this connects us, which is Brazil. The liberty connects us to God. If you meditate the both nations together, connect us to God. We're not leaving the other nations, other countries behind. But both countries are so strong. At the same time, carry so much responsibility in this planet. But if you meditate in this both symbol, maybe you can see, if I'm not traveling in the Mayans, that's the expression that they say in Brazil when we say something that doesn't make much sense. But freedom and liberation. Allan Kardec has a question, 621, where it's written, the law of God. It's written in our consciousness. When our consciousness is free, when we can sleep in peace. We know we have done everything right, according to God. We find peace, inner peace. Nowadays, it's very hard to do that due to the financial pressure that we have in the world. But if we connect ourselves with God, we can. So let's do it. Do today. Because maybe it's not done tomorrow. Maybe not even 5 minutes from now. Because we don't know what's going to happen. Life is short. Take and precious. Don't waste it. So I'll invite our beloved Bella to come and singing for us. People dance.
When the night has come and the land is dark and the moon is the only light we'll see. No, I won't be afraid. No, I won't be afraid. Just as long as you stand by me. So darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. If the sky that we love upon should tumble and fall, or the mountain should crumble to the sea, I won't cry, no, I won't shed a tear, just as long as you stand by me. And darling, darling, stand by me. Oh, stand by me. Oh, stand now. Stand by me. Stand by me. It's always a celebration of life with Dulce, which is why I told she's the spirit of this event, right?
Yes, absolutely.
May I close with a prayer? Okay.
I think, once again, thank you, everybody. I have to just say this.
The picture.
We have to take a picture. We want to take a picture. But what was it you said back when you were talking to me, Lucy? You're glad that I'm your ex-husband? Is that the best compliment I've ever gotten, I think? I will never forget that. I'm glad you're my ex-husband. Anyway.
Husband number one.
That's number one. So, I think you want to do the closing prayer now, and then we do the picture?
Yes.
Okay, let's do that. So, what we'd like to do is we're going to do that, Bella? Perfect. All right, Bella's going to begin to close the prayer, and then we'd love everybody to be able to stay, come up on stage, and grab a snapshot if you wouldn't mind. We'd really love that. Bella, you take it.
Switch the gears! Adriano!
After so much we have received in all those possible, all the teachings that we were able to go through in this day, so special for our souls, for those that had the chance to hear the kind words of our dear friends, and the prayers and good thoughts that were emanated from this room to spread towards the shadows that still lurks in many places on this earth. Lord, our Father, thank you so much for loving us. This love that we can never measure, that every day more we see it growing, expanding throughout our relationship. In these moments of suffering on earth, where brothers and sisters are giving up their chances on earth, although they have committed and will commit mistakes of the terrible suicide, you still love them and will love them forever. There are thousands, maybe millions of people on earth thinking on giving up their lives, feeling alone, left aside, with no one to talk, no one to confide their pains. Well, maybe that no human being is there for them. We are sure that you, Lord our Father, is there and is here for everyone. That no matter how bad someone is, how much they are suffering, you love them as much as you love the angels in heaven. And then we do love them as well in our own way. No need to give up because we are unloved by someone or unloved by humanity. There's reasons to live, plenty of them. And one of them is because you love us. And we all human beings in our realms of suffering will grow above those terrible things. Days will come that moments of these will be no longer necessary, because the sufferings of suicide will be behind it in the books of history. But for now, we that so understand the value of life, we will stretch our arms and embrace those in darkness of death, and tell them with any means possible that they are and they matter to us, that we will help them even a little. So please, you that are in this situation of despair and loneliness, you may not know, and we may not see us in time ever. But be sure that our prayers, our feelings of love will reach you. And above, God is reaching you all the time. And His divine flame will burn all the darkness in you, and life will be restored fully to you. So Jesus, our dear friend, we thank you so much for every moment letting us know as well that you love us. And so
let's do a picture.